Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rewrite Your Story. I'm Dr. Teresa A. Smith, Dr. Taz, and I'm grateful that you decided to spend this time with me. Last time we talked about those moments when the story we have been living no longer feels like a fit. We explored what it means to recognize that something has shifted even when nothing around us looks different. Today, I want to stay with that conversation, but from a different perspective. Recognition is an important, but recognition by itself does not change anything. Eventually, life asks us a different question. What do I do now? That question rarely arrives with complete clarity. Most of the time, it arrives with uncertainty. We may know something needs our attention, but we're not completely sure what the next step should be. If you've ever found yourself living in that space between knowing something has changed and knowing what to do about it, then I think today's conversation is for you. Let me tell you about Marcus. Now, Marcus was the person that everyone counted on. We all got a Marcus. His family called him first whenever something needed to be handled. His friends described him as the go-to person. At work, people appreciated that he never complained and was always found a way to make things work. He was the one that if you need it done, Marcus is going to make it happen. Well, for years, he believed that being the go-to person meant always saying yes. If someone needed help moving, he was there. They needed money. Even if he didn't have it, he'd figure out a way to help them out. If they wanted him to work late, he stayed late. He was the overtime guy. He rarely stopped long enough, though, to ask himself what, if any of it, was costing him. He's doing all this stuff, but what is it costing him? Well, one Saturday afternoon, Marcus had a moment and he was sitting on his porch with a glass of sweet tea when his phone rang. A relative needed another favor. That wasn't unusual. Marcus answered the phone the way he always did. Before the conversation ended, he heard himself saying, "Let me see what I can do." He hung up. Then something unexpected happened. He did not get up. He just sat there for several minutes. He realized that he had agreed before he had even considered whether he actually could. So he was just on autopilot. Agree. And he realized it wasn't because he wanted to, but because he'd always done that. So that afternoon, Marcus didn't call anyone. He didn't make no announcement. He did not decide to change his life. He just kept sipping sweet tea. And he noticed that something that he'd never done before, he began to pay attention to that he was always agreeable. Again, he'd just been making decisions on autopilot. Well, I think many of us have experienced moments like that. Our situation may have been different. Maybe it wasn't a family member. Maybe it was work or friendship. It could be sorority. It could be frat or some other fraternal organization. It could be church. Maybe it's something that you keep saying to, what can I put it? Something that you just always have said yes, because that was just your pattern. The details may be different, but the experience, that's the commonality. The experience is often the same. we find ourselves responding before we have checked in with ourselves. Sound like autopilot. One of the reasons I appreciate the Stronger Transformation Framework is because it reminds us that our lives are constantly informing one another. Something that anchors us feels a little uncertain. And when I say it anchors you, I'm not talking about, it could be particular relationships. It could be the way that you unwind your rituals. It could be certain locations. It may be that you need to make sure that your feet touch the ground. That anchors you. So sometimes what anchors us feels a little uncertain, and we find that our identity begins to shift. But we need honest conversations with ourselves that no one else ever hears. Those things are not separate from rewriting your story. They're all a part of you. They're all a part of your story. So then there's a decision. Here's what I found interesting with Marcus. His rewrite did not begin because he finally learned how to say no. His rewrite began because he paused. That pause began to create a space for him to dialogue and have some real talk with himself. He needed time to think, time to notice, to choose instead of just reacting on autopilot. Many of us spend so much time responding that we forget we have the opportunity to decide. I have the opportunity to decide? Yes. The opportunity belongs to me. Well, you know how life is. The next morning, another message came through. Can you stop by after work? Now that seems very harmless. Can you stop by after work? But Marcus looked at the message. Normally he would have said yes immediately. Instead, he put his phone down. He thought about his week ahead. Then he replied, I need to look at my schedule. I'll let you know this evening. Now, most people, again, reading that message would not have thought twice about it, but Marcus did. Later, he said, that may have been the first time I answered from where I actually was instead of where people expected me to be. So he's writing his story. He's rewriting his story. Now that's a dramatic change. He had not even decided yet whether he would help. But the rewrite was giving him permission to make a thoughtful decision instead of an automatic one. Recognition. Sometimes we think recognition only happens first. I'm telling you, the real life, it's just not always like that. You know, Marcus realized something before he changed one response. Action helps us recognize what has been true all along. Sometimes a small decision teaches us something we could not have understood any other way. Recognition, then decision, and action, they all travel together. They're in the same vehicle. Now, action. Marcus, eventually, he helped some people. he declined others' requests. He started asking one question before he made a commitment. Do I truly have the capacity to do this well? We're going to sit with that for just a moment. Do I have the capacity to do it well? Not can I do it, because that wasn't a question. But do I have the capacity to do this well? Well, some days the answer was yes. Some days it was no. Nothing about Marcus' life changed overnight, but over time, his relationships became healthier because his decisions became more honest. His decisions became more honest. I'd like to leave you with something to notice this week. Pay attention to one place where you respond automatically. I don't want you to pay attention because you're going to judge yourself. No, I just want you to notice it. And I also want you to notice, how do you feel when you respond automatically? Then ask yourself one question. If I gave myself permission to pause before I responded, what might I notice that I have been missing? If I gave myself permission to pause before I responded, what might I notice that I have been missing? You don't have to make a different decision today. You only have to create space to make an intentional one when the time comes. Thank you for spending this time with me. One of the things I hope these conversations remind you is that rewriting our story is rarely about one life-changing decision. Typically, it begins with one honest pause. Sometimes we discover that the decision has been quietly growing inside of us for a long time. We realize we're still gathering the courage. Sometimes it'd be a little evidence, but we're gathering that courage to actually make the decision. But both are part of the journey. As you move through the week, I hope you give yourself permission to pause before answering the next question life places in front of you. Not because you owe anyone an explanation, but because your story deserves the same thoughtful attention you are giving to everyone else. Your story deserves the same thoughtful attention you give to everyone else's story. You know the drill. Before you go trying to take care of someone else, make sure you take care of your own story first.